last episode of this season, Sarah. How are we feeling?
Accomplished.
Well, that's a good feeling to have. I generally listen to my podcasts while in the car, and I love this person, Mel Robbins. I just love listening to her podcast. It's a very motivational type of podcast. She talked about in the episode that I listened to was practical tools to use when you feel overwhelmed. And one of the things that she said, which I think fits so beautifully with our episode today, is that she was like, you need to write down what you need to do. The episode basically went about like, I feel overwhelmed, like I have too many things to do, and then I just end up doing nothing. And she was like, okay, but it's all like going on in your head. Nothing is ever going to happen. You need to actually write that down, and then you have to use the rule of three, which is pick three things that is important for that day and do it. And if you want to go listen to that episode, which is a really cool episode, it is called Practical Proven Tools I Use When I Feel Overwhelmed. It was recorded on the 20th of March 2023. So basically, it's like, it's all very nice when your story lives up in your head, but if it only lives up there, that's where it's going to stay. So you actually need to get that idea and that story and those characters out of your head and onto a piece of paper and write.
I love today's episode because, all the tips and tricks that you can get from other people to get things productive and get things done is absolutely what you need. So that's amazing. So today I'm just drinking water, and I'm sorry I'm boring today. I'm absolutely boring today, but I promise I will say more interesting things that I'm drinking.
You promised. So, we're going to keep you to that. So I'm having a fruit forest today. I'm assuming it has something to do with berries. Goodness gracious. I just want to swim in this. Like, this smells delicious. Why does it always smell so much better than it tastes? Not that it's bad, but I'm like, all the teas always smell so delicious. It's very mild, like it's a potent smell.
Maybe it just needs a little more honey. You can relate that to writing. Put a little more honey in it, draw out the goodness.
See, Sarah's already busy with her thoughtful words over here. Alrighty, so let's get into the last episode of season 3. Hey ho, let's go! Welcome to Tea and Tales. We are so glad to have you here with us. I'm Madeleine Nainal.
And I'm Sarah Sampson. We especially want to thank Susan Sedecko and Ichabod Ebenezer. Today, our episode is about Stephen King's tips on writing. We'll discuss a little bit about our feelings about each of these, because you cannot completely and accurately copy another author's style. That is not how you're going to find your voice and joy in your writing. Stephen King has amazing suggestions. We hope that they give you inspiration in how you can spice up your writing.
Exactly, because how my schedule looks like every day and how Stephen King's schedule looks like every day are two different things. So use it as you see fit, use it how you want to interpret it, and you can even take it and put a spin on it and make your own personal tip that you create for other people that might work.
Here we go. Number 1, if you want to be a writer, you must do 2 things above all others. Write a lot and read a lot.
I feel we have said this on this podcast so many times, and especially read in your genre, because you will need it for comps, you will need it for places to find agents, and because you write in a certain genre, you write in a certain style. You will find what melody works in that genre, and you will find what readers like. If you're like, okay, I want people who also read Sarah Adams, this is kind of the style that she uses, so I might like to interpret that into my writing as well.
And as a writer who wants to be published, people expect you to be knowledgeable in that genre. They want you to be an expert, and you can't be an expert if all you know is how you write. You have to be able to understand the styles and speak intelligently on other people's books and know who people are talking about if you go to a convention or you're trying to network with people. If you're a fantasy writer, you're going to want to know when people say, oh yeah, Brandon Mull. You want to know who that
Hmm.
person is.
I mean, I feel I know who Brandon Sanderson is, so I feel that's a step up for me.
People call them the Brandons. He's more of a YA fantasy writer, and he's pretty fantastic.
Gotcha. Okay, which brings us to the second tip. Stories consist of three parts: narration, which moves the story from point A to point B, description, which creates a sensory reality for the reader, and dialogue, which brings characters to life through their speech.
This one I feel like is really breaking it down. And I love how he's staying very much zoomed out on the overall picture. He's not saying you must have so much dialogue to so much description to so much narrative. He's saying these are the elements that you must balance. If you are missing description, your world's going to feel flat. If you're missing dialogue, then your characters are going to feel like they're just floating around. They're not interacting with anything. And without the narration, you can't fully understand why the story is going from point to point, all the reasons and intrigue that happens between the rest.
You need to have a good balance between all those elements. Otherwise, your novel is also going to fall flat. It doesn't help if you write fantasy and 90% of the book is world building and then 10% is like your character. And they're going to be like, wait, what? What am I reading? Like a National Geographic novel? Like, what's happening here?
I feel like you just pricked quite a few fantasy writers, but it is so true. And each genre is going to have a different balance. Like in romance, you might be a lot heavier on the dialogue and on the narration, where in fantasy, you're going to have a heavier description because you have to sink them into a new world. But if you get something out of balance, you're going to lose your reader in one way or another.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, so number 3, and we are going kind of fast because there's 14 tips. The situation comes first. The characters, always flat and unfeatured to begin with, come next.
I will say this for a moment. I was like, no, I disagree with that statement. But then I was thinking about how I write my own novels. And I was like, it is so very true because when you write your first draft, you basically write the skeleton of the novel. Yes, you have characters in there and emotion and plot points and structures and all those things. But it's only when you do your second, third, fourth edit or draft that meaty pieces are put onto the skeleton of your story. And those meaty pieces that you put on is how that character of yours moves from a second dimensional character to a third dimensional character. I don't know if you feel that way, but it's kind of the same for me with acting. The more times I do a performance, the better I get to know my character. And so with writing, the more times you edit it, I almost want to say, the better you get to know your character. So then the more emotion you get out of it, the more depth you get out of it, the more understanding you get for the character and the situation you as the author put the character in.
It's interesting that you brought that out, that throughout the book, because so many times I've beta read somebody and I get to a scene and I'm just like, the scene just feels flat. It just doesn't feel quite right. And it always comes down to the situation wasn't put first. They were so focused on the dialogue or so focused on the mechanics of how they wanted to move the character through the scene.
Which brings us to tip 4, which is whether it's a vignette of a single page or an epic trilogy like Lord of the Rings, the work is always accomplished one word at a time.
This is one of those moments where I feel like you can get this advice so much that you start to be annoyed by it. It's 3 words that more than you had. It's 50 words more than you had. It's okay. You're fine. And it can feel very frustrating when you're looking at it and going, but I have to get 90,000 words, but I wanted 2,000 words. And all of that can get frustrating in your system. People put a lot of pressure on themselves to accomplish something in the time frame that they want it. And so when something happens that makes it so you don't accomplish that, either like this morning, I was going to sit down and write for an hour and my husband called and I had to run. And I came back and jumped right onto here. So I did not get that hour of writing time I wanted. I could very easily now be very frustrated for the rest of the day, but instead I'm going to say it's accomplished a word at a time. And I will get time tonight to put down some words. It's not going to be the same, but it will be something. And then tomorrow's the next day. And sometimes I see this pattern in my writing. Tell me if you see this in yours, where I will sit down and just struggle to get 10 words or a page. It's just so hard to get the words down. But then 3 days later, I sit down and start writing, and the next thing I know, I've done 4,000 words and I'm feeling on fire, and my brain is just like, the world is beautiful. But then the next day, 200 words.
You are not alone. You are not alone.
If this advice frustrates you, change the mindset from what you expect, what I expect of myself to be able to accomplish on the best day. Change that into I have accomplished and moved forward.
You and I have been on this journey for a while now. I have a new work in progress that I'm working on. I say in quotation marks, it's not going well. And then every time that I feel so frustrated because I'm like, I can't even get one word down, then I really just take a moment and think, I've written an entire novel before. I can do it again. I just need to give myself some grace. And I think that also kind of combines with the one word at a time, is just also give yourself grace.
I like it. So let's see what he says number 5 is. The most interesting situations can usually be expressed as a what if question.
That is a great question because I think that is also a question you need to answer when you do your blurb for your novel.
Mm.
So if you don't have that for your novel, then you're going to really have a hard time trying to write your blurb.
Or your scene.
And the thing is, if you're stuck, I think it's such a great question to ask yourself, what if they do this? What if they do that? This is a great exercise for overthinkers. It is also a way for your character to lead you to where they want to go.
And it's a great way to make your novel interesting. Because if you're asking yourself a what if that you haven't seen in a novel before, or you haven't seen a character go there before, you now explore a new avenue that's going to also pull your reader in to say, oh yeah, what could happen if fill in the blank.
Fill in the blank. So he then moves on to say for number 6, the best stories always end up being about the people rather than the event. So I think when you write your blurb for your novel, you have to make the agent care about your character. Otherwise, why do they want to read the novel? And I feel it's the exact same thing. If I don't care about your character, why do I want to read your novel?
Exactly. I like to think of this like if there's an earthquake in the middle of the desert, nobody cares. But when there's an earthquake in the middle of a city, people care. Why? Because you have characters interacting with the event. So you have to bring in why the event affects the characters or the event feels flat. Make me love your character. So I want to know what happens.
Our new theme song.
Number 7 is with a passive verb, something is being done to the subject of the sentence. The subject is just letting it happen. You should avoid the passive tense.
Listen, it had the word tense in that, and I'm like, I've already lost because I'm not English, okay? Do you know how terrible my tenses are? I tend to do well with like past tense and present tense. It's those passive past future indefinite tense, and I'm just like, sorry, what now? So when he was like passive tense, I'm like, sorry, what now? So correct me if I'm wrong, because the way that I've always seen it is because I tend to do that when I do beta reading as well, and I'm like, this is passive, not active. And the way I see it in my mind is this is telling, not showing. So that's also kind of how I connected passive and active by being like, if you're being passive, you're telling me. If you're being active, you're showing.
If I'm being perfectly honest, the way I usually find out I'm writing passive voice is Pro Writing Aid tells me.
Love it.
It puts that beautiful blue line under it. And then when I scroll over it, it says, this might be passive. Consider revising it.
I go, well, you know how I know? Rose tells me. She will highlight it. She's like,
The thing I really love about what he's saying about passive voice here is to remember the purpose of getting rid of passive voice is to make your characters a stronger actor. People don't want to read a story where everything is happening to the character and they don't feel like they have any power over it. And passive voice is one way that can subtly make your readers feel like your character doesn't have power in their own story.
A very good way of explaining it to a 2-year-old. Which leads us to number 8, talk. Whether ugly or beautiful is an index of character. I mean, in all honesty, I have no idea what he's saying there. So, can you enlighten me? Is it talking about dialogue? Like, I have no idea.
I do believe that it is talking about dialogue again and the importance of your dialogue because your character's personality is shown a lot through dialogue more than it is through their actions. The dialogue is going to drive their thoughts. If you think about when you're talking with people, you read their nonverbal language, you watch the actions that they do, but then when they say something, it puts that context to the actions and the nonverbal language that helps you to understand that person as a whole. And it brings in all the, now he says index, it's the index of the character. And I want to say context instead of index. That you get to know how your character is now putting their thoughts and feelings in action against other people's thoughts and feelings and puts that dimension into them that helps you with your character.
Yeah. I do find it so ironic though, because in real life, people will say actions speak louder than words. And then novels were like, words speak louder than actions.
But at the same time, it can be the same because if you see a character say something and then immediately turn around and do something that completely negates what they said, then you know, now I know what kind of character you are and how I need to trust or not trust you. All right, so number 9, description begins in the writer's imagination but should finish in the reader's.
When I read that, I was just like, brain explosion over there. Because even though you as the writer not only know the iceberg, but you know everything underneath the water that nobody else is seeing, you need to realize that how you picture something in your mind needs to be written down on that piece of paper so that the image that you have in your mind is the image that the reader gets.
Yes, but then also trusting your reader to fill in the blanks.
I must admit, like, there's a lot of hard things for writing and a lot of hard like concepts that I need to continue working on as I'm writing. But for me, I have the hardest time with trust your reader, because then I would literally be writing something and I'm like, I trust my reader, and then my beta reader would come and be like, "What do you mean here?" And I'm like, "I trusted you. You broke my trust. Now I don't. I now I have to explain everything to you. Like, what is this?"
Finding that balance can be hard. Like sometimes it's the reader themselves. Some readers don't pick up on subtle hints to be able to build the picture, and others do. Get all the beta readers, and if a majority of them aren't getting it, then maybe sprinkle a little bit more in. But if it's just the one, it's like, okay, they obviously missed something and I'm okay. But it's also realizing for writers like me who have big worlds that you have developed, realizing that you cannot description dump. Therefore, you have to trust the reader to fill in the world in some points, and it may not be exactly what you thought or what you imagined. Is it absolutely necessary that your reader understands exactly how this thing looks because later that's going to be important? Or is it just something that you want because you built it that way? And to be able to trust your reader that their imagination is going to fill in holes that you leave and still maintain the core importance of the story and understand and love it and make it part of their own. Because once you've given it to that reader, it is their story and they need to be able to make it partly their own.
So then we go to tip 10. This one. Okay, I'm gonna read it. The road to hell is paved with adverbs. Loudly, nastily, slowly, kindly. That he is slowly and kindly killing me softly is what's happening over here. So, first of all, it's so funny because when I was learning English in school, my sixth grade teacher was fantastic because she actually made a song to tell us what verbs are and adjectives are and all those things. You know what song she never taught us? Adverb. I never know what an adverb. I knew what an adverb was. I was like, I still don't actually kind of understand what an adverb is. I will reel this back to last week's episode with the lovely literary agent, Kathy Hedricks Armstrong, the guidelines that she shares with writers and to say like which things you should be avoiding. And she definitely had the avoid the lee at the end of your word. And that's kind of how I started like getting it, but oh my goodness gracious, I understand why he is saying it because it pains me to say this, but I understand it because then you are a lazy writer. I do understand that, but it's very annoying because I'm just like, I feel I want to say loudly, okay? Like my English vocabulary isn't that big, okay? That's the only word I know.
I find this one interesting because when I was a new writer, I was like, but why not? It's just I'm trying to get the idea out there. And when I found out how to write around them, it wasn't always because I needed to make my prose fancy. It was because I needed to explain it in a more showing, more active way. But these ly words will often indicate where you are telling and possibly passive voice. When you face them head on and rewrite the sentence to avoid them, it becomes active and it becomes engrossing, showing sentences. And please, please, please take this with a grain of salt. We are not saying always get rid of every single one all the time. I use them in dialogue all the time because in dialogue you want it to be snappy. I use it in action sequences where you don't want as much showing, you want more faster paced things, moments where you need the telling, use it, but sparingly. Don't use it as a crutch. Don't use it because it's easy.
Yes, 100%. Like an exclamation mark. Don't use it because it's easy.
Show the emotion. So, number 11, and I'm going to take this one because it has a vicious word in the middle of it that I can't even pronunciate. I 100% expect people to put in the comments, it's pronunciated, and then like phonetically put it and be like, yes, I could have looked that up, but I just got too scared of this word and I would never use it anyway. Never use emolument when you mean tip. What that means is don't use fancy language just because you have a big vocabulary. Make sure the fancy language has a purpose and a point and in a moment that it's supposed to be used. Otherwise, it's okay to use plain language.
I 100% agree with that because I love reading, but I love to read easily. I think that's why I kind of like romance because it's not difficult words that are in there. And it's probably why I don't like literary fiction because it has all these big words and I'm just like, thanks, but no thanks. I feel that I know enough English words. It doesn't mean that you have to stop using your big words. That's why that literary fiction genre is there. So you can have all the most beautiful words that you ever want to have in your life and just throw it in there and be like, ta-da, look at all these pretty words that I have. I feel you have to look at your target audience. You have to look at the genre that you're writing. And then you have to decide, is this word that I want to use gonna make it harder for the reader to stay connected to the story? Or are they gonna be intrigued and be like, oh yes, that's a melody that flows. It just sounds so beautiful when I say it. I think that is what he's trying to say there. Like, there's a time and place for everything.
And I think a lot of people fall into this trap when they decide to use the thesaurus and don't fully know what a word means or the context of a word, like, because it's only a synonym in certain situations. And so you can get yourself in a lot of trouble when you are just trying to spice up the language or make yourself sound more affluent rather than focusing on what is actually working for the story itself.
Funny story. So, I was writing my novel, okay? I hit it with a passion when I have like the same word, like the next two paragraphs or something like that. I'm like, I can't use chair again. We should find another word. And then I would go to Word Hippo. It would be like synonyms for chair. And then they would give all these things. And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I know what that is, but sure, let's find that one. Then I go back to editing like my novel and I go to that piece and I'm like, what? what is that? Then I have to go Google what I meant. Maybe chair is fine.
I feel like people just get themselves in trouble a lot with this one.
So, number 12. I don't like this one. Okay. Especially the last part. Okay, I'm going to read it. So it says, set a daily writing goal. As with physical exercise, it would be best to set this goal low at first. I suggest 1,000 words a day. I was laughing when I read that. Don't be funny. Don't be funny, Frank. Like 100, maybe. I'm like, don't be funny. On a good day, maybe 1,000. I was like, start low, and he's like, 1,000 for starting low. For whom? What do you think I do for a living? Just sit at my desk. Like, what?
This is where I feel like writers who have been writing for a very long time lose sight of what it's like to be a beginning writer, where it feels like 600 words was so much. And I try to remember this when I'm talking to people because, like, I'm talking to high school students. They're like, yeah, I have to write an essay. It's so long. I'm like, oh, how long is it? It's 500 words. Is 250 words. I'm like, okay, that's an hour. Like, what's wrong? And I have to stop and remember that when I was in high school, 50 words was a lot of words, and the topics weren't always ones I was interested in. Therefore, it's so hard to get 200 words. If that's the level you're at, 1,000 words to me now, 10 years down the road, I can do 1,000 words on a good writing day. If I'm a little stuck, then I might struggle with 600, but I can do 1,000 words. That's drop in a bucket if I have the time. And if that feels too much for you, take it for what you need. I think his point here really is like stretch yourself and get that pattern. And as you get the pattern and you're stretching, you will find, oh, 500 words was easy. Maybe I'll shoot for 600. And then one day you'll sit down and write 4,000 words in a day and you'll go, oh, okay. So that's what that's like. But you have to build yourself up to it. It's like trying to run a marathon when you haven't run even a mile in years. You can't just jump into it. All right, 13. Call that one person you write for ideal reader. He or she is going to be in your writing room all the time. I don't think he means like physically, literally there, but like mentally.
It's almost like when you're painting a portrait, you're like, just stand there still, very still, while I'm writing a few words. Don't move. Well, actually, when I read that, I was like, it actually makes so much sense because if you have that ideal reader in mind, then I think the way that you think about your story, the way that you think about your character growth, the way that you think about your characters, and your plot lines and your climaxes and your stakes, that is really gonna shape the way that you write for that ideal person.
And there's a few people in my mind who are my ideal readers who, if I write something and I'm questioning it, I will send it to them. Usually they're people who are also my alpha readers or my creative partners, so they already know the basis of the story and the characters, and they read it and then they give me the feedback. So having that person in your mind also helps you to know who I'm marketing this to and who I'm writing it for, so you can just stay focused.
Yeah. Though then I do find myself being in conflict because so many people say, you should write for yourself. Like you should write what you want to read and you should write the story that you want to tell. So then I'm like, but then my ideal writer would be me. But then I think to myself, even though every person in the world is different, there are elements of us that do align with each other. And if I am a person who likes this kind of reading, there would be other people who would like that kind of writing. And so if you do not have beta readers, if you do not have alpha readers, or if you do not have someone in mind, use yourself as an example. Would I like this? Because that is a base start. Naturally, you do have to go to people after you've written it. But I think if when you start out, just use yourself as an example because you are writing because you love what you are doing and you love the story that you want to tell.
Thank you so much. And you brought that back to my memory that first draft really is just for you. So maybe this piece of advice is better for going into your second draft as you're editing into the second draft to focus on the reader instead of yourself. I think people can get very disappointed in themselves in their first draft if they are trying to write for other people instead of themselves. So if you're one of those people, consider not doing this until the second. draft, maybe even the third, depending on how your process works.
If you, for your first draft, have this ideal person that you're writing it for, I feel like then you're going to set such an expectation on yourself to be like, oh my gosh, I have to write it like this and I have to do it like this because otherwise this person is not going to like it, which is not going to be a fun process for you. Which brings us to our last one. So the last one, okay, actually kind of entwines with what we've been talking about. If you can do it for joy, you can do it forever.
If at any point you feel like the joy isn't in your writing, then perhaps there's something in your process that is making it not joyful for you. Go back and reevaluate. Every job has its things that you're going to enjoy and the things that you don't. And there will be things in writing that you're just going to not enjoy doing. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about if you get to the end of the day and it is becoming a slog day after day that you just do not like writing anymore, there's probably something in your process that is not working for you. Consider looking at other ways people do things. Consider adjusting something that you do if you can pinpoint what it is that is making you so frustrated so that you can find the joy in your writing again.
Exactly, because at the end of the day, as much as this industry brings frustration and stress and so many other elements to it, at the end of the day, you started writing because you love telling stories. You started writing because you love to connect with other people. You started writing because you have this desire for a character that you want to express. You started writing because you want to express a healing element of yourself in a story. And so you have to just remember why you started writing in the first place, which is what brought you that joy to begin with.
We hope that something in these 14 tips and something we have said today has motivated you, has helped you to either start writing or continue writing that manuscript that is on your mind, and has been able to lift you up and help you to see you're not the only one out there, that we all experience the same situations and frustrations. We're there with you and we're pulling for you. But we like to keep things short here on Tea and Tales. Get your fingers back on the keyboard and your pens back on paper.
And if you like what we are doing here, if you've enjoyed all 3 seasons that we have done so far, with guests we have on, with the topics that we are discussing, go follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads at Tea and Tales Podcast, and on Twitter/X and TikTok at Podcast Tea Tales. And go comment and tell us what topics you would love us to discuss, which guests you would love us to have on. Share with us your most useful and favorite writing tip to share with others, because we love this community that we are creating. We love sharing advice and knowledge with all of you. We really do hope that you have enjoyed these past 3 seasons, and we hope that it has helped you when you talk to someone and you're like, oh wait, go listen to this episode. And we are very excited to start season 4 next year. So we will be taking a little bit of break in December because holidays and everything, but we do hope that you do stay connected with us, and we can't wait to be in your ears again very soon.
We'll see you there. Happy writing.
Bye.